Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, my Italian is not good enough, so I will speak and tire you in English. I do a lot of things in my life, but one of the things which I consider my primary occupation actually is screenwriting. So I'm a writer for cinema, for films. And writing in general is a process in which you create and you make up stories and fantasies and imagine another worlds. But on the other side, for me, writing is a lot about listening and observing the world around me, especially people around me, their problems, their troubles, and the way they behave, the way they deal with the conflicts, the way they deal with their everyday life problems, how they react, why are they violent or why are they silent. Basically, I observe people and I love observing human behavior. Not only people, I also observe myself in this sense, because when you write, you put a lot of your own personal dramas and your own personal secrets, your own personal truths, or you search for them in the process of writing. Basically, what I found over the years of writing for film interesting about human nature is a very peculiar phenomenon. It's when you are in trouble, when you have a problem that you have to go over with, when you have to an obstacle which you have to pass, or something you have to accept that you'd never planned in your life that it will happen to you. Just before the frustration kicks in, before you accept your failure, you suddenly start comparing your problems with other people's problems. And if you find somebody who has a bigger problem than you, then suddenly your problem becomes less significant, it becomes smaller, it becomes a little bit less relevant, and then you somehow manage to overcome your troubles and overcome your issues. This is exactly what happened to me when I got involved in the film called Stitches, which premiered in 2019 at the Berlin Film Festival and went on to many, many film festivals, won a lot of awards. But of course, the process of writing for film is a very long process. Basically, it takes 3, 4, 5 years for me and the entire team. It took us from the main idea, from the basic idea to the premiere, it took us about 5 years. I was in a very strange place when I started writing Stitches, and when I heard about the story that I then started researching. Basically, I had to accept one big truth, my own truth. I wanted to have a baby, I wanted to have a child, I wanted to get pregnant, but I couldn't for many, many years. And it took me a lot of IVF attempts, a lot of disappointments, a lot of painful failures, a lot of hope, to come to the end of the road and to accept one very simple, but for me at that moment, a very big sentence. And that sentence is, I will never become a mother. For me, that was the end of the world for many, many reasons, but one of the reasons was basically my own psychology. I'm not used to failing. I'm used to getting what I want. And this I didn't expect in my life. So suddenly I had to accept this very simple sentence that I will never become a mother. And as a writer, there is one beautiful thing when you are somebody who is creating something, some new stories. Writing is a sort of a cure. So I decided that I will make. I started writing. I didn't decide. I just started writing a new film about motherhood, and then it was January, and it was Trieste Film Festival. I was there, and I met Misha Terzic, who is the director of the film, and we were sitting having dinner. We knew each other, of course, from before. Even though he's from Belgrade, I'm from Sarajevo. We see each other a lot over because of work. he asked me what I was doing, what I was writing, and I told him, well, I'm writing about motherhood as a general story. And he said, wow, how strange. I'm also thinking of to start working on a film about motherhood. And he told me about the story, which was familiar to me, but I never really paid attention to it before. It was a story of many, many families whose kids were kidnapped, whose babies, just infants, newborns, were kidnapped in the hospitals under the pretense that they are dead. And then they would be given to other parents or so-called, sold to other parents. There were about 500 families, registered families in Serbia and in Bosnia and Herzegovina fighting for truth for many, many years, for 20 years. But this story, even though I heard about it, didn't really make headlines in the media because we had the war, we had political crisis, economical crisis. There were bigger stories, so to say, around. And for me, when I was reminded by Misha about this possibility, I thought, yes, this is a bigger problem than I have. What if I had a baby? And what if I went to the hospital to give birth to the baby? And then they took the baby away from me, told me that it's dead, and what would I do? It was suddenly, I said yes to Misha, I want to write this story with you. It's perfectly fine because this issue is much bigger than my little sentence, I will never become a mother. So just after Trieste, I went to Belgrade, and together with Misha, we started researching. It was incredible. There were so many stories. They were absolutely incredible, absurd, unbelievable, fantastic. As a writer, you get excited by this incredible ways of the real life. But at one point, I told Misha, the director, I said, listen, there are too many paths to go. There are too many ways to go. We have to decide for one particular path and make the story about one particular person. And since these stories are so unbelievable, it is a pity to make up something fictitious. It's better to get inspired by somebody who is real. So Drinka came in at that, Drinka Radonic, this beautiful lady in red. She came in at that moment. Misha heard about her. She was leading a very quiet life in downtown Belgrade. She had a seamstress studio where she was correcting clothes, skirts, pants, shirts for the neighborhood all her life. And she was one of the women who claimed that her two babies, were stolen in the hospitals when she was given birth. Misha went to see her. She was ready to talk because for her it was a very long way. She was already fighting for 17 years to get to the truth. He filmed her. She was ready to talk. He sent me the interview because I was at that time at home in Sarajevo. I saw it and I said, yes, yeah, this is the woman. So I also went to Belgrade to meet her. I met her and her daughter Ivana. We were sitting in a beautiful cafe, and she was fascinating because she was emotional but never melodramatic about her story. She knew exactly what is important to tell me and what is totally irrelevant. She knew that I was making a film which is only 90 minutes long or 100 minutes long, and her story is basically 17 years long. So, comparing these two stories in terms of time frame is almost impossible. So she was very economical in telling the story. She was not selfish in sharing the information. And at that moment, I really felt like, oh my God, I'm meeting a real hero. If this was a Greek tragedy, this would exactly be like, Antigona or Sophocles or Oedipus or some big character who is totally ready to fight for their cause, no matter what is happening around them. But on the other side, I felt honorable to have met her and honored. But I also felt under pressure. Oh my God, now I have this responsibility towards this person who went through this. Will I ever manage to level up to her expectations? I know a lot of writers and a lot of filmmakers who were trying to make films on the real life stories. And at one point, usually in 80% of the cases, they would really have a big conflict with the real person who was reading what they wrote or or trying to understand how the film will look, and they did not agree on it. So I know about many films which were stopped, but I was lucky because Drinka was very, very wise. She actually understood that making the film based on her story, it's not actually totally on her story, meant that I will choose what to say and change some things in order to make the film strong, in order to make the film function. And another thing which Drinka never wanted, she didn't want the film about her. She wanted the film to be about motherhood and about mothers, which was also my intention. Writing process is very, very strange. You know, at the same time, it's conscious because you sit down and you know what you want to write, especially for film. It's not like poetry, and so basically you know your scenes and you sit down and you actually write. But when you begin writing, something takes over you. So you have the story which you want to write, but you also have your own character, your own psychology, your own agenda, which you want to put inside the story. And at one point, these characters become something totally else. And this is also what happened with this fact when I was writing this. Drinka actually allowed me to be the screenwriter. She allowed me to be a film professional, and she never really meddled. She was always there to help. Even when we were starting to shoot the film, she was there to help the main actress prepare for her role, which was also very, very important, so it is quite authentic. There are actually two reasons for why this film was, for me, very crucial in my career, but also very crucial for me as a human being and as a writer. One thing is the truth, the quest for the truth. I think it's one of the most honorable quests that you can have in your life. It's not always pleasant, because truth is not always pleasant. And for me, Drinka was fascinating because she was ready to fight for the truth. And she was ready to trust her feeling that her son is alive. And she found him after 17 years, and that is something also which we have in the film. She found him, but of course she will never find him. He's lost, he's with other parents, and they can never really make up for the 17, 18 years that they spent apart. But she was fighting for truth. When I look at the films which I've made, I don't really know how these stories found me. But what I know is that it seems that most of the characters that I write about are usually women who are ready to fight for the truth. And basically in my first film called Snow from 2008, which was shown at the Cannes Film Festival and awarded there, I also wrote about a village of women who came back to their village with the children after the war, after the Bosnian War. Hoping to find their men in the village who remained there to defend the village, but of course they were not there. And even though these women knew that after a few years of searching for their men, they're probably dead, they were always hoping that they are alive. But in order to go through life, in order to embrace the future, they had to accept this truth. So this film was also about the truth, and I also think it's something which attracted me to Drinka, because she was fighting for the truth. In her path to the truth, she became a master of law. She became basically her own lawyer. She knew of what could stand on court. She collected evidence. She's absolutely, you know, absolutely amazing. The second thing why I was attracted to Drinka is that I recognize something very beautiful in her. It's something that we all have, but something that we sometimes try to push under and try to forget that we have. It's this gut feeling, this irrational gut feeling that about something that we want to do. And this gut feeling gives you the passion for life. It actually makes you fall in love with one person, not another person. It makes you like this and not that. So this gut feeling is unexplainable, it's irrational, but it's very important. It's the essence of life. And I believe it's also the essence of art, because you feel that you are driven to do something and you just do it. She, even though they told her in the hospital that her son is dead, she could hear him for months cry overnight. And this made her believe that he's alive. So it was the gut feeling which pushed her and she to find the truth, and she found out that her boy was alive. For me, as I said, these two things were very important. But for me, the film was also like a cure. It was very important for me professionally. It was shown in Berlin. It's a dream come true for every filmmaker in the world. It won many awards. It's still showing around the world. The second reason is also very personal. I told you before, I entered the film trying to accept the sentence that I will not become a mother. But in the same week when we heard about Berlin, that Berlin accepted the film in the program, in the official program of Panorama, I learned that I was pregnant. So for me, it was a big, big cure and a film probably that I will never forget. Drinka's quest for the truth made a miracle in my life, and I thank her for that. And with this, I will say that films can change the world. People often ask, can art change the world? I think yes. You know, even though if it's just shaking one world of one particular person and showing the world what has happened and changing our views, I think it is changing the world. Little by little, but it is shaking and changing the world. Thank you very much.